Shofar gadol yitaka, the great shofar will sound. This is one of the great and unifying lines of Rosh Hashanah, a line which speaks of the calling out of the shofar, a shofar within which we hear so many notes, so many sounds, so many stories, communities, peoples, lands, and celebration. The sound of the shofar is one that bridges generations, bridges shtetls, towns and communities of such variety. It is a sound of great power, of great unity. The simplicity of the note permits for many aspects to be contained within. I would like to share just two. The shofar blast is the same blast that we hear at the bottom of Mount Sinai. V'kolot v'rakim v'anan kaved al har v'kol shofar. There was a thunder, lightning, and dense cloud upon the mountain, and a very loud blast of the shofar. And everybody in the camp beneath Mount Sinai trembled. It's a sound which announces the coming of the law, announces a moment when the Israelite people who have been traveling in the desert become the children of Israel, the Jewish people, the people of the book. It's a moment announced and framed by the sound of the shofar, where we become our very essence, where we receive our tradition as a people. It is also, in great simplicity, the sound which announces the new month, announces the coming of this year, this new year of 5781. Historically, the shofar was the instrument that announced the coming of the new year. Within it is plenty. Within it is a sound ripe for interpretation and discussion. I can picture myself as a small child wrapped under a talit which seemed enormous, right in the back of the old synagogue. We're crammed there just by the fire escape, and we're listening to the shofar. Even then, like now, I find the sound hard to describe. What does the notes tell me? What do the notes of the shofar tell me? And how do they penetrate so deeply inside of me? How do those notes touch my soul? This week, I taught at Kihilatenu, at our Cheder, and I was sitting before just one family, and we were talking about the high holidays. And I turned to one small group, and I was telling them about how the Rambam describes the shofar as a wake-up call, like an alarm clock. And one girl waved her finger at me and said, no, it's not an alarm clock, nobody is asleep. And I was like, how do I get through this part? But she was right. Nobody's asleep. So how could it be an alarm clock? We did a few minutes of negotiation, and we decided that the shofar was more like a school bell, or when somebody rings the bell at the end of break. It was an announcement of transition between two periods of time, a signal of a changing of pace, a changing of season. Even this girl, just under the age of 5, had a vision of what the sound of the shofar was to her, what it meant, what its touching notes called out. The shofar gadol, it is a shofar within which so much is contained, and each note of that shofar is personal and individual to the person and the uniqueness of the person that hears each note. This year the notes of the shofar are different again, and they reflect back, they reverberate back on the story of the lives that we've lived. If nothing else, it will be hard for many of us this year not to hear the shofar in person. It is a festival where even the sound of the shofar feels in some way or other under attack. And as people still in lockdown, we've had to adjust our plans, and our understanding even of this very holy and special time. In addition to that, we face off against other crises at this time. We have our climate crisis. We have stories of Brexit going on in the background. And yet, in spite of all the different parts which challenge us at this time, the Shofar still contains within it a critical and important message that should not be overlooked. The Shofar is this great unity. Within it are 1,000 lessons, within it 1,000 notes, and yet one note is heard when we sound the Shofar. Hayom harat olam, Hayom ya'amid b'mishpat, kol yitzurei olamim. On this day, the world came into being. Today is the birthday of the world. And on this day, we all stand in judgment, together as one community, one world. The Shofar also tells us of that unity, that in spite of all of the different things that we individually face, all of our different stories, even all of the stories that we have faced across all of the generations since the beginning of time, there is one note of the great Shofar that is called out at this time, which in spite of our difference, in spite sometimes of our separation, in spite of our isolation, somehow we are all brought together, listening to one sound of one great Shofar, which holds us all together. This year, I hope for everybody, wherever you are, wherever you're listening from, that you feel that inner peace, that collective unity, that collective togetherness of celebration. And I wish everybody great blessing and joy and a year of really good health and sweetness for all of us, all of our community, all of our families. Shana Tova Umutuka.